Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast with Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. Thanks once again to our friends at Cantex Roofing and Construction for sponsoring this podcast.
I'm Mike Hebert, owner of Cantex Roofing and Construction. Every day is game day, and we'll get it right when it comes to your roofing, construction, windows, and mirrors. Call Cantex Roofing and Construction today. Together, we are one serving you.
Chris, how you doing, man? It's been a busy week/weekend, but pretty good one in these parts.
Yeah, it has been a couple of home wins. Saturday, Monday for Grant McCaslin's guys. Pat Mahomes wins his third Super Bowl, and everything coming up Red Raider right now, man. It seems like.
I like that. It's been pretty fun. It is kind of a busy week for sports. Baseball crossover starts this week. You got that coming up towards the end. Men, remember, depending when you're listening to this, Valentine's is this week, so you may want to take care of that around all the sports. But it is, that's what we saw on Monday night against the Kansas Jayhawks. You don't get many of those. You got to cherish that as much as possible because that just doesn't happen, regardless of opponent in the Big 12. That doesn't happen against anybody, but especially against the Jayhawks. I say that. You had one, I believe, in 2019 that was a 29-point victory against Kansas. But most every night in the Big 12, Chris, and you can attest to this as much as anybody, is a grind where your blood pressure is through the roof, and you just don't know what's going to happen. Texas Tech, from start to finish, for the most part, went out and just took control. And man, what a fun game to be a part of.
Yeah, that was the worst loss by Kansas basketball in 74 years against an unranked opponent.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, as far as
maybe maybe that opponent shouldn't have been unranked, but
that's but it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so that's what goes down in the history books.
Wow.
Bill Self's first ever ejection as the head coach of Kansas in a Hall of Fame career. The only other time he'd been ejected was as the head coach for Tulsa in Laramie, Wyoming, and I believe he told the official, or the official said, "Hey, I'm standing right next to you. You don't have to yell at me." And I think Bill Self said like something to the effect of, "I'll yell at you if I want," and then that was it. But that a true story, and that he told that story. And then you saw as close to a perfect game for a hooper as you'll ever see from Darrion Williams.
Crazy.
And that was also historic, not just in Texas Tech, but really, I think, in the sport. I think it was maybe the first time ever that anybody had scored 30 plus with double-digit rebounds and not missed a field goal.
That's wild. I mean,
yeah, and you win by 29 points, and his plus minus was 29. So it was just, and his work on the defensive end was stellar too. It was just one of those in the moment nights to where he just kind of was feeling it, and it wasn't forced. It was all within the confines of the game.
Yeah.
He took tough shots, and just he never missed. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, you could tell by the look on his face. He was kind of he was feeling it. I mean, he's like, I can't believe myself right now. And
it's like, remember Michael Jordan in the finals years and years ago when he kind of hits, and he kind of shrugs like, "Hey man, it's like one of those nights." Yeah,
I mean, you saw one like kind of duck off the back of the rim and fall through. You got to have some luck to go perfect, but just the zone that he was in was unreal, and that was a blast to watch as well. And I think there has been a common denominator in a lot of your wins in Big 12 play. you've had a guy just step up, whether it's been Pop Isaacs or Chance McMillan at OU or Kerwin Walton. You've had someone kind of go off in a game almost every time. And I think the difference in this team and some of your teams in recent history is that you've got so many different guys that have that ability to go off in a single game. And that's such a luxury for Grant McCaslin to have.
Yeah, you know, and Joe Toussaint early on in the season, he had some
Yeah.
20+ point games.
Yeah.
You're talking about, you know, Pop and you know, who had what 32 versus what was it, BYU?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and obviously Chance McMillan has done this versus Butler. He did this versus Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
where he got in the 26 or 27 point range and kind of carried you a little bit.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have guessed that D5 was necessarily capable of this. That's what they call him in the where's
Sure.
number 5 and all that. But I wouldn't have, and I would have said that this wasn't in his bag of tricks, and it's simply because you don't ask him to score a ton,
Yeah.
and he's so good at so many other things. But he's, you know, this is back-to-back double doubles for him. I mean, you know, UCF and now Kansas back-to-back double doubles. But yeah, it's just and he's kind of an under the radar personality. He just kind of blends in. He's just a good team player, and that's why it's fun for. It was really fun to watch him have a night like this because he didn't show up like trying to score 30 or feeling like he had to carry it or, you know, whatever it may be, but it just kind
Yeah.
of happened, and that was the innocence of it. But, you know, sports, right? I mean, you just never know what you're going to get every night out, and he's definitely, you know, put himself on other teams' scouting reports in a different way going forward.
Yeah, it's and the fact that he's a sophomore is very nice to see too. You've got this guy for a while or hope to.
He sure
Uh,
seems like an old sophomore too.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
He's very mature. He's very old beyond his. I don't know. It's hard to explain it, but yeah, he's like an old soul
Hmm.
with a kind of a well-rounded game. But yeah, man, you're going to benefit from him for years to come, thankfully, because geez, man, I mean, you know, he's just kind of starting to or scratch the surface on like really what he can do. But I've always just loved how many different ways he can help his team or beat you
Yeah.
as a facilitator, as a rebounder, and then obviously against Kansas, it was as a scorer. But dude, I mean, you know, I mean, and to beat Kansas like that, I don't care whether they were without McCullough or not. You were without Warren Washington for bits and pieces, but yeah, I just it's hard to get blowout wins in this league. It rarely happens. But Kansas's worst loss to this point in the season, they'd only lost 5 times, but it was in the non-conference against Marquette. They lost by 14. But their other road conference losses were by an average of 5 points a game.
Right.
You know, they
Right.
lost to Central Florida, to Kansas State, to Iowa State, and to West Virginia. And there's a couple of 5-point losses, a 6-point loss, and a 4-point loss, but it basically equals like a very close games. And then, boy, not this night. This night was all about Texas Tech, really from behind. You know, from you beat them perimeter. You know, on the perimeter in the first half. In the second half, you hammered them in the paint. And then I think you just crushed them on the glass, which is also a very positive. You know, it's the second game in a row you've really out rebounded the opposition, and this is something you really had been struggling with, and all of a sudden you've kind of flipped it. It's two teams that really rebound the ball well. I mean, that's the Hunter Dickinson is the leading rebounder in the conference at
Yeah.
11 or 12 a game, and he ends up with I think 4 below his average.
Yeah, I think that's where the two biggest takeaways I had from the game, obviously outside of Darrion Williams, is what you did on the glass, which was what you needed to do, but also what you did to Hunter Dickinson defensively. I mean, you take
Mhm.
their best player left after McCullers gone out of his elements, and you really Warren Washington bodied him up several times, didn't give him many good looks. I thought, and I know Coach McCaslin spoke to the defensive game plan that his assistants put in, and kind of gave some credit there. But you really never let him get many touches close to the basket, and that's where he wants to be. He seemed frustrated the whole night, and that kind of set the tone for the rest of the Kansas offense.
Well, he won't ever forget the night he was in Lubbock, Texas. That's for sure. It's a pretty good career for what is more than likely, at this point to be a first team All Big 12 player. But yeah, this was one of the worst games he's had all season. Yeah, you hold him to 2 of 12 from the field.
Yeah,
Just kept pushing him off of his spot, not letting him catch it where he wanted. The double team, you know, because what they do is they get the ball reversed and then they play to leverage, and he's got somebody sealed maybe on the high side of him. They dump the ball in and he's 7'2", and he just but
yeah,
you wouldn't let him catch it there, or the help was right there, or you're pressuring the feeder, and so the pass isn't really able to be thrown on target, and just all kinds of things that I think really went into defending him. And KJ Adams was the same. And
yeah,
KJ Adams has really bailed Kansas out many nights,
yeah,
and he takes a lot of 5 to 7 footers on most nights, but against Texas Tech, it was a lot of 10 to 12 footers, and those are different. And you just wouldn't let him, catch it or shoot it where he wanted to or where he was comfortable. And yeah, I mean, a combined 3 of 23 from those two guys,
yeah,
and that's two of their top four leading scorers right there. And and obviously Kevin McCullough not playing affects it, but they'd won some games without McCullough playing. And I mean, you had to go to Baylor without Warren, and you played, much of the night without Warren, and against Kansas. And so, I don't have any sympathy for anybody, and nobody's going to feel sorry for you if something is in fact wrong with Warren. That's just part of the league, man, part of the game of attrition, part of trying
yeah.
to, have some depth to your team and all those things. But yeah, it was a big win. And I think it rose your net ranking by 12 spots.
Yeah,
I think you went from like 38 to 26 in the net.
I believe you're correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you moved up like in the Ken Palm rankings quite a bit. I mean, it's just,
17, I think, in the Ken Palm. Yeah,
yeah, this was just a win that in some ways on paper, it counts for more than just one, if that makes sense, with this, how good of Kansas's resume is. But and it's not the same Kansas team that we're used to seeing. They were again thinner, but I mean, that's still Kansas. They've got, I mean, they've got McDonald's All-Americans sitting over there. They're just not quite ready and all that. But anyway, it's pretty fascinating stuff, man. But
yeah,
that was a big one.
yeah. Tech moves from 38 prior to the game in the net ranking to 26, which is huge with that quad one win. You'll have another quad one game coming up this coming weekend. Before we get into that matchup, we'll start with the first question from Leah. She asks, "How is Warren Washington's foot?"
Good question. Last when I talked to Grant after the game on Monday night, there wasn't any updated status there. I think there's some concern. I'm sure X-rays are being done probably, in the hours after that game or the next day. Don't have an update there. Grant probably won't visit with the media until, the day before you leave for Ames, Iowa. And so you may not get an update until then. But you just fingers crossed, because
Yeah,
I'm fearful that there's an injury there, and it may not be good, but you just don't know. So I'm gonna, fingers crossed that it's no big deal.
yeah.
But he tried to play through it, couldn't, and just yeah.
I mean, we see it with big men a lot. Big men and foot
It's
foot problems. It's unfortunately, I'm hoping that's not it, but we'll see. But I do think the minutes that Robert Jennings has gotten in recent games is vital because you may have to lean on him a little bit more. And I don't know, was that a season high in minutes last night? I think he had 19 and a half minutes, which was a large
I
amount for
think,
him.
well, and I think he may have played more in Waco. He
Okay.
battled some foul trouble in Waco.
Yeah.
His biggest deal is that you're seeing some development here, but but I was about to say he ended up last night with 4 personal fouls too.
Yeah.
He's undersized compared to what you're asking him to do because he's kind of playing the 4 or the 5, but he's
Yep.
going against. I mean, he's 6'6", 6'7", and he's going against like 7'2" and 7', and it's just he's having to fight, scratch and claw for everything he can get, and it's hard for him to finish on the offensive end just because of the length issue, and then it's hard
Yeah.
for him to defend at times just because he's just a bit physically overmatched. But it's not for lack of effort. I mean, and he is starting to play better and get some more confidence, and you can see it. But yeah, and he may in fact be asked to do quite a bit more here if something happened to Warren and Warren can't play or can't play as much or whatever the case may be, and then that's when you enter into the Kyron Lindsey and Emily Yalaho conversation too.
That's right. Yeah. So looking ahead, kind of wrapping up the KU game, looking ahead, this is probably the toughest game going to Ames, Iowa this coming weekend. Probably the toughest game you have left on your schedule. Who knows? Maybe the toughest game outside of your road trip to Houston on your entire Big 12 schedule. Tough place to play, and this is one of the top right now, top 2 teams in the Big 12.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be maybe any tougher than going to Houston, but it's
Yeah,
right there. And I think to your point, this is like the environment though will be much tougher than Houston just because it's hostile and it's full and they're really good. But and it's interesting to note that these are the 2 teams at the top of the Big 12 standings we're talking about, and
yeah,
neither one of them has lost at home.
yeah.
Maybe you catch a bit of a break because it's an 11 a.m. game.
Maybe.
It's a bit earlier. I don't know. Maybe that's me grasping at straws, but yeah, you're going to have to deal with a handful on Saturday morning. They are like Houston. They are phenomenal on defense on most nights. They cause a lot of problems. They don't let you get to where you want to go and all those things.
Yeah,
And it's just it's going to be tough. Especially if your big fella can't come along for the ride. But like I said, we'll see. But yeah, I don't disagree with you from this is like, as far as generally speaking, it's either Fog Allen Fieldhouse or Hilton Coliseum that are 1 and 1A as far as toughest places to play in the league on the road. And now, granted, you won a Big 12 championship on that floor back in
true.
2019, but there's just not been much success otherwise.
Yeah,
I think if you remember last year, well, like was it 2 years ago? You went up there with like 6 people.
I think it
Okay,
was
you had
last
like
year, wasn't it?
no, like 2 years ago, you had some COVID issues,
Okay,
and you literally had like 6 healthy bodies, and I thought you tooth and nail, man. You like lost a close one.
okay.
KJ Allen played a ton. And you fought them last year. I think you got, I want to say it was something like an 84-50
Just got smoked.
type
Yeah,
final, and you got ran out of the building. I think you had everybody available, but you just got, yeah,
yeah,
you got worked.
yep.
So it was tough to watch. It was an early to mid January, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and you were in a tailspin starting out the conference season 0-8. But yeah, you've got a better team this year and a connected team and all that. But I don't know if you'll have a healthy team. We'll see.
Yeah, going to be obviously a really really tough trip. And now this question comes in from Matt, talking bigger picture. Is Texas Tech truly a Big 12 title contender right now, or do you consider them more of just a team that's trying to get to the tournament?
It's probably closer to a team trying to get into the tournament than title contender. And the title contender conversation Yeah, you're in the mix, but you don't have much margin for error at all. Okay, like as
Yeah.
far as the win-loss column, if you were to go like pull off like the win at Iowa State, because to be able to do this, you're going to have to continue to mix in some wins on the road. Obviously, you've gone to Fort Worth and Waco recently, didn't get those done. You do have wins over Texas and Oklahoma. It's probably going to take winning the rest of your home games and then a couple of more, road wins. And again, there's some ones out there. You've got trips to Stillwater, you've got a trip to Morgantown, you've got a trip to Orlando. On paper, those are all winnable games, but again, West Virginia is like Jekyll and Hyde. They are beating the who's who of the league at home, and then they just get destroyed on the road. So it's not like it's going to be easy going to Morgantown. And then Central Florida is kind of the same. And they've beaten Kansas at home. They've beaten Oklahoma at home. They
Yeah.
go on the road and don't fare as well. It's just hard to win on the road. And then, with Oklahoma State. So, but if you can do that, then I would say, yeah, you can work your way in. But again, you're going to have to hope that teams like Houston and Iowa State kind of come back to the pack a bit. They're ahead
Yeah.
of you in the standings by like a game and a half, depending on when you look at the standings. But, Houston's got a head-to-head over you. And depending on what your game result is on Saturday in Ames,
The total wins, if you're having to break out your crystal ball, total wins for the Big 12 champion this year will be 12, 13. What's it look like?
yeah, I'm going to say that I bet somebody gets to a 13-5.
Okay.
I think right now, let's see here, just so I'm clear.
Everybody's got at least 3 losses in Big 12 play right now.
Yeah, yeah, because see, Houston and Iowa State each have 3. That's where I was just trying to make sure I clarify. I bet one of those teams has manages to only accumulate 5 losses, and I bet that's what wins it. I bet 13-5 is what I'm going to go with. And maybe there's a tie. There's a big that's a big game. I think it's like next Monday or Tuesday when Iowa State goes to Houston. I think that's the only time that they play. It's at 6 o'clock on ESPNU, which it could be for first
Okay.
place.
Yeah.
But that'll be a big result
Huge,
there
yeah.
as far as the conference race goes.
Yeah, no question. That one will be rather large. Okay, so moving on. Well, not quite moving on from basketball. This question is from Frank. It says, did we have any basketball or football recruits at the KU game?
Yeah, there were several basketball prospects there, 3 or 4 of them. I won't get into who, but yeah, there was definitely some visitors there that saw that there was some. I think you had a few different players there from a basketball standpoint there on Saturday for the Central Florida game. So yeah, they were very strategic in trying to get some folks on campus for unofficial visits to those environments. And it's hard to envision a better
Yeah,
a better environment or a better put your foot forward type scenario for the program in general
sure.
when you beat Kansas by 29 points in front of that kind of crowd and audience and all those things. So I would say that if you're Texas Tech basketball, you're like, woo, we guessed right. Because I mean, you bring kids in football, basketball, or any games, you don't know, it's like you want them to see all that comes with being a player here, but you obviously want to play well and let them see what it's all about. And a lot of times, those games don't go your way, but it just so happened that this one certainly did.
Yeah, that one definitely went your way and some good there. I
And
think I
then
read,
some.
and then some. I think I read that the number 1 basketball player in the state of Texas may have been in last night. So that's pretty good to have that
Yeah,
him get to
I think
witness that.
well, it depends on what ranking you're looking at, but you're talking about, I think, Kingston Flemings,
Yeah.
who's a 2025 prospect. He's certainly a top target for the Red Raiders. he may not be number one according to the services. I don't know,
Yeah,
where he ranks necessarily. He's a top player in the country, state, whatever, but it
yeah,
may be the eye of the beholder. He may be more
sure.
higher ranked in tech size than he is another program. But yeah, I think it's that certainly doesn't hurt you whenever somebody like that is on your campus and in front of that crowd and result.
Not too bad for sure.
No.
Got well, before I get to Nick in Portland has a really random question. We'll finish with that one. But there is one question on Patrick Mahomes. This one from Sharon says, is Patrick Mahomes inarguably a top 3 quarterback of all time in the NFL after the Super Bowl win?
I think most people are going to say yes right now, and the reason is because he's not anywhere near done with the end of his career. Okay, he's still got he may be just halfway through
Yeah.
what he can do here.
I mean, he's still 28.
28 years old.
Yeah.
He's 6 for 6 on division titles.
It's crazy.
He's 6 for 6 on AFC title game appearances. This was his 4th Super Bowl, 3-time winner. And so I think with that, like, it's so much more than what Brady accomplished at this stage of their career.
Mm-hmm.
Like Aikman won 3 out of 4 years back in the early 90s with the Cowboys. What Montana did, and some of these, but that's the thing, is like the quarterback in the NFL is largely judged off of the Super Bowl wins. And I think he is certainly, it's pretty fascinating that he's in that conversation at 28 years old. It just really tells you kind of what he's been able to do. And I know I've said this before, but like, I get that Andy Reid is going to get some credit here, and people are going to give credit to his tight end and
Yeah.
maybe an improved defense and all that. But no, this is, I mean, Pat Mahomes deserves a tremendous amount, if not most of the credit for what goes on here, because there's just some things that happen here. And like in this past Super Bowl,
Yeah.
I think Kansas City's special teams were a huge difference. Their kicker, their ability to recover a muffed punt, their ability to block an extra point. I mean, special teams was massive in the Super Bowl, but it's Mahomes that can make all those dreams come true when you give him the ball with a chance to tie or win it in the end of regulation, and then again in overtime, because he tied it once and then he wins it the next time he gets it. But it's just like there's no more sure thing in all of the sports than Pat Mahomes with the ball at the end of a game. I mean, think about it. I mean, I don't know what else
Yeah.
I would put on the line than that, but it almost feels like a guarantee. And I don't even care. And he's not perfect. He's not like just perfect, but I mean, I'm not sure there's another thing I would be willing to bet on that's more sure than that. Regardless of opponent, setting, weather, cast around him, he just kind of figures it out. And it's pretty fascinating to watch him kind of do his thing at 28 years old. Face of the league, one of the most powerful, sports leagues that there is. Maybe the English Premier League is the only one that eclipses it as far as worldwide popularity. But he is the face of it, and really that there's no sign of that changing anytime soon.
Yeah. With the Super Bowl in particular, you just see him continue to flourish, and that's what's crazy. You see so many of these guys. We've seen good seasons out of individuals, and Lamar Jackson's done it a couple of times, but he doesn't get it done in the playoffs. Cam Newton had a phenomenal season, but the consistency that he's done it at this point in his career is what's so amazing, I think, to me and to everyone else. And
this was the year. I mean, his top receiver was a rookie.
yeah.
I mean, their best defensive player held out for the first month or so of the season.
Yep.
There was a lot of drama with the team and distraction.
I think that's fair.
There was some frustration. There was a lot of thought process that this was the year that you could get them. I mean, even as recently as Christmas,
Yeah.
where it just wasn't really going well, and it felt like much more of a grind this year, to where they were really having to work a lot harder. And you didn't get a first round bye in the playoffs. You had to go to Buffalo. You had to go to
Yeah.
Baltimore.
Yeah.
And yet you still the result remains the same. So it's like, geez, man, if you don't get them this year, like when is it going to happen?
I mean,
So
quite frankly, it's the Michael Jordan effect so far. No, he's not Jordan level just yet, but the halfway point where Jordan had 3 championships, you've got a lot of talent elsewhere in the NFL. I mean, Kyle Shanahan has got to be banging his head against a wall because he's had some very talented teams that could have won Super Bowls, and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, guys that are very Super Bowl capable, but there's the MJ effect of Patrick Mahomes that's standing in the way. They're just not able to get through him. And that's I mean, you lived through the 90s and saw that firsthand with Michael Jordan.
yeah, and I'll say this too. Brock Purdy he's going to have some Texas Tech nightmares, because if you remember, what was it? Was it 2020 or 21? That's when Garibay pops the 62-yarder to win it. And then
Yeah,
he sees the Tech grad and Pat Mahomes,
would have been 21. Yeah.
yeah, in the Super Bowl here in 24. And yeah, I thought about
So,
that.
so.
Thought about that too. But
All
yeah,
right. Quick question from Nick in Portland to close it down. And he says, random question. Back in 2001, for one season, Tech football wore the big time apparel uniforms. Why did that partnership end so quickly?
yeah. It was it just for 1 year, I guess.
It was just the 1 year because I think you went from, I believe it was Nike in 2000 and then back to Nike in 2002. I believe
Okay,
that was the
and
case.
then Under Armour after that, I guess, in
Yeah.
a long-term
Short.
agreement. Yeah. I mean, the big time deal was, and it was spelled Tyme with the little Gumby man,
Yeah, it looked
on
like
the side.
the singular wireless thing. That's
Yeah,
kind of
that's
what it
right.
looked like.
This was a company that I believe, I think he was special teams coordinator at the time. Manny Matsakis was on Mike's staff, and I think he was involved with this company. And I think it was just like, hey, we don't have anything better. Let's do this. And so somehow there was an agreement in place, um, to sponsor the team, and that be the apparel. This was before the apparel contracts that we see now, where it was department wide, and every program was kind of on their own and just trying to outfit it, with whatever. And so I think that was it was a smaller company that I don't know was really ready to be built for competing in this space. So it was short-lived, and I think Manny Matsakis wasn't on staff for too much longer after that. And so at that point, it was like, okay, we don't really have a reason to know. But that was that was the relationship, and the correlation between big time and Texas Tech even coming together was, I believe, Manny Matsakis related. So yeah, he was a special teams coach that would he had the wireless mic,
Yeah.
and he had like a nickname for every unit. Like one was called the Bravos, one was called the Sharks, one was called so it was like Bravo. He'd walk around with like that little Janet Jackson or Justin Timberlake, like, microphone headset out there at special teams. And it was a fascinating guy. I will say that. But yeah, that's the reason why. I think just 1 year, just because it wasn't really built for the long-term sustainability in that space.
You are an encyclopedia of Texas tech knowledge, Chris Level. That was impressive. You had that tucked away. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Well, Level, that'll do it for us. So let's have a happy show next time around. You go up to Ames, do your part, get a dub if you can. But
Yeah.
Just don't freeze. That's what the goal is. Try not to freeze while you're out.
I will try. Luckily, it's an 11 a.m. game, and we'll see what we can do. But it's going to be very, very difficult. But hey, man, we'll see. You'll just roll your sleeves up, and hopefully everything's okay with Warren. That's the biggest concern, not the result on Saturday. It's just Warren's status and all that. So we'll see what we get. But appreciate it. Thank you to Cantex Roofing for being a part of this one. We certainly appreciate that. Thank you, Choice. And yeah, man, the sports continue. So we'll talk about it more next week, I guess.
For sure. Happy opening baseball week to everybody out there as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Enjoy that. For Chris Level, I'm Choice Woodman. You've been tuned in to the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.